Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this evening's bunker show, coming to you from our new Scotland Yard bunker, where today we're going to be looking into the police and judicial system and airing out a few cobwebs that are lying beneath the sewers of New Scotland Yard here. And joining us in the bunker today is the lady with the big smile. Here's Helen.
Evening, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. Really looking forward to tonight's show. Got some great guests for you. Don't forget, you can come in the Dark City chat room straight off the Dark City Radio website, and you can ask any questions of our guests, and I'll try and get them on air for you.
Thank you very much, Helen. And also joining us in the bunker, here's Jimmy.
Hey guys, I don't know if it's smellier here in the Scotland Yard bunker or the Westminster bunker. Let's see.
And joining us in breaking through some of the murk is our one of our legal land regulars from the No State Project. We've got Vin James with us. Hi Vin, how are you doing?
Yeah, hi everyone. Thanks for having me on again. Glad to be back.
It's great to have you back, Vin. I understand I caught a few of the No State Project shows that you've been hosting with Mark Stevens recently. There's some really great shows there. So I guess you've been keeping busy while you haven't been joining us here in the bunker.
Yeah, I've been in court again myself today and fighting my own case, so we'll talk about that a little later if you like. And yeah, I've just been doing a lot of helping out people and stuff through Skype and everything. And I've just met with someone today actually, someone else I'm helping out with a court case, which hopefully we can get resolved pretty quick. But yeah, I'm getting busier. Put it that way. A lot of the old free man on the land gurus are putting a lot of work my way. I think a lot of other people at the moment. So yeah.
And also, the fact that legal aid isn't there. So it's great that you've been able to help people out and also put people in touch with people who can help them with new experiences and learning new skills to help look after themselves. So hopefully we'll get into a bit more of that later.
Yeah, I mean, our group's growing in the sense of, we're getting more people involved in the No State Project over in Old Blighty now. So it's getting to a thing now where hopefully we can get some people in different parts of the country that can obviously start putting together court role play groups. Plus, obviously we can have people who can act as Mackenzie friends and as witnesses in court. Because we do this whole thing where we go in and we act as I can't think of the name of it now. We act as journalists and that. Reporting for the No State Project. So yeah, we're starting to get some more ground now and get more people in the group, and it's always encouraging to see people starting to move away from a lot of these other alternative theories that aren't obviously working for them, and they're starting to come around to our way of seeing things. Not that we're a religion and we're trying to say our way or the highway sort of thing. It's we're just trying to get people thinking a bit straighter, and it's all about learning a skill set, critical thinking.
Of course, and it's and of course, seeing that when there is a need for something that isn't there, like legal support, that actually people can take it upon themselves to empower themselves. I mean, Jono, you've also been in that kind of situation. You've also done your Facebook group. Could you tell us a little bit about how you came to be helping people, and why you think that being part of the community is an important thing to do to help people when they're in those kind of situations?
Yeah, sure. First of all, thank you for having me on. It's great to be with you. You can hear me all right, can you?
Yes.
Great, okay. Well, I haven't always felt the same way as I have. I haven't always been an activist, and over the past 5 years, I suppose, is when I really started to see things differently. And 2 years ago, just over, I went to Bolcombe, and hadn't had a lot of contact with the police, and I didn't have any opinions on how they did their jobs. And when we first got there, there was the usual local bobbies there who were pretty much interacting with the protesters there, and there was a kind of affinity between the police and the protesters. And I think as soon as the police realised this was happening, they started to change the different areas, the different counties of police who were coming in to police it, so they would get no sort of real bond between the protesters and the police. And then what really happened that made me want to start something was that when Reclaim the Power came down for the weekend for the Solidarity, the place was absolutely crawling with police, and it became violent. And I thought to myself, right, I'm going to go back home and this will be all over the news. And I got back home and there was nothing, absolutely nothing reported about it. And I felt that it was so wrong what I'd seen that I wanted to sort of let people know what had been going on. So I decided to start the group purely for what was going on at Bolcombe, thinking that that would be all that would be reported in there. I thought it was a local thing that would happen, and it would just keep people informed on how the police were behaving up there. And to my astonishment, and with the help of a great guy called Doug Troop, who was part of the initial few people who were involved, the group grew, and it started to take on not just the Bolcombe issues, but other issues all around the country. And it started to highlight how the police were behaving in certain areas. And, the Barton Moss sort of policing of that incident, the fracking thing up there, was totally different to how it was policed at Bolcombe. And it seemed that it needed to get out there, and people started taking videos of what was going on and putting it into the group. And the more that was happening, I think the more people started to realise how important it was to take video evidence of what was going on, because it was influencing what was happening in the courts when the police were saying one thing, yet the video evidence was saying something else. And that's basically how the group has come along, and we've got just over 1,500 members now.
And it's a great repository for information and support,
yeah.
and also in that way. I mean, and that brings us to James. I mean, we'll come on in a little bit, holding some of the officials to account, and as you mentioned, Jono, in terms of helping people when they're actually charged. Yeah. But James has been working with Citizen Guard, which is a group that seeks to look out for people. Hi, James. Would you like to tell us a little bit about
got you.
Citizen Guard for us?
Are we in?
Yeah, we're all good. Would you like to tell us a little bit? Hi, James. Could you tell us a little bit about Citizen Guard?
I'm back.
Great. Now, how did you get started with Citizen Guard? Can you hear us, James? Okay. Well, we'll come back and introduce James when he's back with us. In the meantime,
John, I had a question for you.
Sure.
That just sprung to mind as you were recounting your Bolcombe experiences. Were reporters actually on site, or do you think that the decision to withhold information from the press was made at an editorial level?
I think it was very much made at a higher level. I don't know how much the police were influencing what was being edited out or what was allowed to be shown. But certainly there was one piece of film that the BBC put out, and I think it was only because it was being live streamed at the time and they couldn't get away from it. And that was when the police had a real battle on with the Reclaim the Power people, and it got really horrible. And that was broadcast. I don't think it was ever meant to be broadcast, and I think that the broadcasting was very selective of what they wanted to show. They choose certain people out of the crowd and talk to them on the other side of the road. They'd edit things out. So, I think it was very much edited down to take away the publicity from what the police were doing. The only other incident that really got in the newspapers was Caroline Lucas's son when he had the pressure points thing put all over the newspapers. It was everywhere. And I think they just wanted to keep it quiet.
And was the first incident you were talking about? I think that was when somebody ended up with a knee in the head, and that was quite shocking. And yeah. I think it was only screened once or twice. And I think it's partly because of social networks and communities like that that help hold people to account.
Yeah.
Is that James back?
Yep, I'm back.
Hi, could you just give us a quick rundown of who you are and what you do? This is Jimmy here, by the way. Sorry.
Okay, I don't think James can hear.
Hey James, would you mind dropping the call and reconnecting without video? I think the problem is the video. Could you reconnect without video, please? Sorry to interrupt the show.
Hey.
Right, I've got the phone. I'm on the phone call instead.
Excellent. Hi, James.
Right. Yeah, it's this stupid camera that I got.
Yeah, would you, as we're going live right now, as we're going live right now, would you be able to tell us and our audience a little bit about how you got involved doing Citizen Guard?
Yeah, well, I set it up because I had gone to all the local MPs, I'd gone to the police about a simple issue of the right to due process. I then went to the Prime Minister, I protested the Magna Carta, done all that. And the ending of it was, I got nowhere. After 4 years of protest, I got absolutely nowhere. So, as you do, you look for the legal aid. There is none. So you're stumped there. And I found that the only thing that I could do was make other people aware that there is no right to due process. If you ask the government to honour all your rights that you do have, they're not there. And they get the legalese experts onto you who remove the goalposts all over the place. But for me, the fundamentalism of all of this
Are you still there, James?
Is the responsibility. None of them are taking responsibility for what's actually going on today. Sorry?
No, just checking in, just making sure everything's coming out loud and clear, mate. This is Jimmy here, by the way.
Okay.
Yeah, just carry on, James.
Yep, I'm back again. But the object of the exercise for me is to help people who, like me, suddenly go in. I just walked into work and my business was closed down. And I had 2 licensing officers physically remove me from the premises. Now, I was absolutely shocked. I went to the unemployment office. I went to the police station. All of this within a matter of minutes. And it just throws you out of sync when they all stand there and look at you as if you're a moron. And that is what is happening today. Nobody takes responsibility for what they're doing. And for me, the particulars here is a criminal offence is a criminal offence, irrespective. If our politicians can stand behind child abuse, the amount of deaths that's going on with the DWP and all the rest of it, and hide behind, they're just not taking the responsibility. They're hiding behind the laws of the land and the legalese experts, and we can't actually hold them accountable in a criminal court because everything gets reduced to a civil offence. No legal aid, you're dead.
That's our resident legal eagle, Vin James. That's part of what he was speaking about very early in the show in terms of
I listened to that bit,
yeah, being able to have the support that that people need, and also sharing some of the skills and experience that people have.
Well, it's the suddenness of it when you actually stand there and you realise that you are an ant against the state, and you have absolutely nothing you can do legally except for go around the corner and start developing your own little group to see what you can do to change it, which is where we've all got.
Which is an interesting analogy in terms of that, because one of my favourite films is Ants, and I do remember the
Ants Against Austerity.
Well, yeah, I do remember the roaches saying, but they outnumber us 100 to 1, and the day they ever figure that out is the day we're in trouble. So, with Citizen Guard, is that part of the ethos, is to ensure people communicate with each other and share that experience and support each other.
But but not only in that, but actually teach each other how these things actually happened. I'd done a very quick exercise on a psychological emotional reaction, and I got a reaction off of hundreds and hundreds of people, and not all of them very clever neither. But I'd done it on purpose, and at the end I explained to them what I had done, and I haven't heard one complaint coming back because I'd done it properly. I got, and they still done nothing, which is what people are doing today. We all know about the paedophiles in the government. We all know about the thieves and bankers. We all know we're getting blagged with a blunt instrument, and it's being done lawfully. We know all this, but we can't seem to do anything because, once again, it comes to the responsibility. They hide behind the legal experts, and we can't get into court because of the legal experts.
It's an interesting one. I mean, I'd like to bring Jono in terms of as he was mentioning earlier. Sometimes when you do record public officials or police officers, that actually it can make a difference. But it's also how you carry yourself when you're doing that, so that you don't yourself become a target. So, Jono, what's been your experience in that regard?
Well, I've done lots of filming of the police. I've covered lots of, well, I say lots. In the last couple of years I've been to several of the fracking camps. I've been to a couple of climate marches. I've been to a couple of November the 5th anonymous million mask marches. I went to the anti-austerity march. So I've seen the policing, and one thing I just would like to say is that the way the police the events and it's so different from one kind of an event to another. And if you've gone to the November the 5th this year and seen the fighting that was going on between the police who were already in riot shields and truncheons up at the ready behind barricades, not letting us protest where we did the year before, and just generally inciting trouble. There were thousands of cameras on those police, thousands upon thousands of cameras. And whatever...
John.
Yeah, sorry.
I mean this respectfully, right? But I remember back at Wapping when they were actually planning these things. I went to a security meeting by that guy, Condon. Remember the Deputy Chief Inspector? Right, him. And the conference that he held was telling us everything then, back in 98, of what was happening now. That there would be no police officers, that we'd have private security companies, yada, yada, yada. And I sat then thinking, he's got to be doing one of them UFO things on us. This can't be serious. And I walked away from that conference, and I've been doing security ever since. And I've watched it change. We've changed into something that's not quite working.
Yeah, but my point being that once you put cameras on these events, they can no longer deny that they're happening. And the more people do that, the more people are seeing that. And if you, for instance, do find yourself in the middle of something like that where you're not doing anything but you get arrested, there'll be 100 people have got a piece of video. And this is where all the groups are coming together, where there are people out there who are helping, who are saying, listen, I've just got a bit of film of this. Is this going to help anybody out there? Then somebody comes in and says, I know somebody who's got legal advice, who knows all about this. And the groups that are coming together now on the social media are absolutely making the police have to take a step back and think about what they're doing. And we're winning so much more.
I agree that the education side of it here, in between groups and letting the people who are asleep wake up a little bit more. But we're all missing out the fundamentalism here. And that is that the people that are actually representing us are no longer representing us. The people who we go to work for, we no longer work for. They just pay us a pittance. And what we're supposed to believe is democracy, the Magna Carta, an unwritten constitution, that's the best one. It's a con. Because when you ask for it to be honoured, they drop you on the water.
Yeah, well, we'll be coming to that in a little while. I mean, it's but the thing that is quite clear is that actually, if you do film and record, it can bring a lot of attention and transparency to events that happen, and can often, as Jono was saying, when the police become aware that they are being filmed, and if they're being filmed twice, they don't have the option of snatching the camera.
They do tend to think twice. Yeah, they do tend to think twice.
And not only that, is that as Jono was alluding to there, that actually when you do get into court, and that information is shown, it often doesn't always tally with the statements that are presented.
Absolutely, yeah.
And that kind of empowerment, I mean, it's very difficult, because sometimes you can have people with authority and weapons being very, very intimidating. But if you keep your cool and you keep filming, then eventually people's behaviour shows itself. Which is, I think, a great part that citizens can, or not citizens, but responsible people can take in terms of looking after their community.
Yeah. Well, it's just a friendly reminder that they're not an armed militia. They're here to represent us, not the establishment. I mean, who do you think these guys represent these days? Us or them?
Yeah, well, they're certainly not representing me.
A lot of it now is, of course, coming over to private security. So there's a whole different kettle of fish there, because I think the problem with the police is that the commands come from the top, and if there's any corruption or anything going on at the top, and I wouldn't say that there is, but we see it all the time in the papers about how one of them at the top's getting found out for doing something like that. And when that passed downwards, it's hard for anyone at the bottom who is, perhaps doesn't agree with the way it's being done, for them to turn around and say, I don't agree with it. They end up not ever getting on anywhere in the job to make a difference. They end up leaving, so we don't end up with any good coppers anymore. And they take on private security.
You get a 20-year-old who's been walking the same beat forever, the poor guy. Yeah. But
I just wanted to mention, as Jono mentioned, and you're alluding to earlier, James, in terms of we've talked a little bit about being responsible and transparent in terms of filming, but also I guess in terms of the police officers that we have and the systems that hold them to account. And with most private services, we actually have less accountability because there's an extra degree of extension because they're private, they're farmed out. So if you have subcontractors for the police force, it kind of makes it a little bit more likely.
There's no responsibility then, is there? They've already shown a serious lack of responsibility for what they've already done. To just farm these places out to G4S and the like. I mean, and I mean this respectfully, right? I wouldn't investigating the murder of my mother or whatever. Can you imagine that? Or they come around to your house because the neighbour's kicking off? G4S doing this?
So it
just doesn't equate with me.
Yeah, and it also, in terms of that, with the most recent legal aid cuts, there was a plan to have super solicitors, G4S solicitors, if you like.
Oh, God.
Now, I know that Vin has had experience with the Crown Prosecution Service, and in a lot of ways how stretched they are. So it can be quite difficult when you're confronted with a very big official machine, and as James was saying, not necessarily having the due process. So, Vin, how do you see the legal aid cuts impacting?
Well, I think the obvious thing is we're going to see a lot more people acting as litigants in person, of course, and I think what it's going to do is it will start creating big problems for the courts, because I think you're going to get a mix of people turning to all the gurus all over the internet, you know, the Cole Lemps and Dean Clifford types and all that, and that's going to cause problems in court where it's just going to hold up the process, in a sense of they want to get people in and out of there and just find them. And I think even if you get people in there using these methodologies which are flawed, it's still going to create a real big problem for them. And I think eventually they're going to have to reform it so people do start getting legal aid, or they're maybe going to bring in some sort of scheme similar to what they started doing with the students, where you can get a loan. You know, if you want to fight your own case
for legal aid,
you can get a loan and then you can pay it back over X amount of time and all this sort of thing. And it'll be maybe a similar thing that they offer to students if you want to go to university. And that's where I can see this heading. But the impact is obviously, you know, it's people are screwed. People are out of it. You know, but I mean, in a sense, it's a good thing. In a sense, it's a bad thing, because obviously, you know, people aren't going to be getting help they need, in the sense of just being able to fight a genuine case in court. But then again, lawyers don't do you many favours in courts anyway, as we all know now. So it would be good if people can start learning for themselves. Yeah. Sorry, go on.
Finn, it's one thing. The legal side of it is one thing, right? Because, like me, a lot of ordinary people who have only climbed up ordinary hills in their life stand against the legality of it, and we can see that it's just not there. We don't have any protection against anything that happens to us. And a very short example here, and it is only an example. I decorated somebody's house. He owed me 700 quid. Wouldn't pay me, not a problem, I think. Off down to the police station, I go and say, wait, go and sort that out. The policeman phoned me up 2 days later and said, if you don't leave the guy alone, I'll do you for harassment. What? It's a civil issue. And here's where they take us all the time. I went down there with no due process, a case that had been taken against me, and the man tells me, and this was one of the police inspectors, he looked me right in the eye and said, Mr. Anderson, what I'm about to say is not my opinion. I have been told by the lawyer behind me. It's a civil issue. Now leave.
On that note, I have a question in the chat room. Somebody's just asked, do the police serve us under common law or the politicians and banks under civil law?
No, neither.
Neither. Yeah, not in the slightest. Not even under criminal law now. Because if you go in there, I was in there the other day, kicking off as usual, and this young guy comes in, he's trying to report a fraud, a banking fraud. Somebody's blacked his card. And they're giving him this website and this phone number, and the guy says, look, I just want to report a crime. I've tried your website, it didn't work. I've tried the phone number, it didn't work. Now I'm coming back here. She said, well, keep at it. What? The guy's walked out of there, and you can see the look of despondency on his face. And this is what happens to us. Because if you're walking away from authority with a look of despondency on your face, it doesn't work.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. Sorry to interrupt you, mate. I mean, this is the thing. The way this is going to work against them, I hope, in future, is that the courts and the police and the entire system is going to lose all credibility. Not that it's got any anyway, but the perception that it's there to do a job.
But then we end up in the hands of the lunatics.
It's already done that. It's been like that for about 1,000 years.
Oh, no, we've got lunatics without rifles at the moment. They're only politicians. We'll end up in the same situation as every other country, where the vast majority of people do nothing, and you get the peaceful right and the lunatic left, if you like. And that's the end of us.
To a certain degree, if people play into those dynamics, which is why the divisive nature of the media is, definitely to come into question there. But
and the fact we're doing.
Could I just make one point? That
the fact we're doing this and
the kinds of. Sorry, am I speaking over?
No, it's probably me. You go for it, mate.
I was going to say the kind of crime so-called crime that's coming through the courts now is so different. I mean, you look at all of the high-profile stuff that's going on with paedophilia and stuff that the police are investigating. The people who are alleging these, crimes are not people with a lot of money. Are they able to?
I don't need to allege it. I was there.
So was I. But
right, exactly. So there's no allegedly about this, sir. And you know this.
I know that. Okay, well, I was just being polite for radio, but what's going on with the paedophiles that are in Parliament and these high places? They need to have the law on their side to try and wriggle out of this, no matter how they do it. It's they can't have it fair. They can't have people with no money to go to court, and it's to do with the kind of the protesting and stuff where they're trying to target people and take them to court. These are not people with lots of money who can represent themselves. They're having to do their own representations and or provide money by crowdfunding or whatever, just to pursue some cause. And
right, I mean, that's the interesting thing that this conversation's raised so far, is that to a certain degree the court system lacks a certain amount of credibility in the eyes of the public, in their willingness and ability to prosecute crimes, which crimes are pursued if there's an economic motive behind it.
I got taken to court by the BBC for owing them £2.76 payment that I missed.
Exactly,
and
of course,
how much it ended up getting thrown.
How much does that cost them to pursue that type of action? And also the same thing with speeding tickets and such like, which can often be sort of economic incentives for people to pursue, whereas actually physical crimes, and as Jono mentioned, some of the historical crimes, they can definitely.
Can I just interrupt on that one little word that you said, historical, and make a very clear point here? There's no such thing as historical sex crimes. They're current offences that are being investigated. By using the word historical, what you're actually doing is demeaning the offence. There's no historical sexual offences. They're offences that are being investigated.
Okay,
the word historical is like the banking crisis. It wasn't a crisis, it was robbery.
James, I'll correct myself. Establishment.
Yeah, sorry, that particular word, historical, just niggles me.
Yeah, because actually it's systematic and endemic in the system, which is a certain amount. It's a certain. Hold on, James. It's a certain amount of what Vin was talking about earlier, in terms of when you have prosecutions that aren't being pursued. Yeah. And the thing is it's actually part of the system that is ensuring that those things are sidelined, that the paperwork is mislaid or incomplete, or that files and evidence are mislaid and lost.
And put off for the best part of 13 years while they investigate it, which is a total disgrace. And by that time, if there was any doubt that it's historic, they'll make it historic by then if they have their way, and that's what they're trying to do.
The thing is that with conversations like this and groups like James's and yours, Jono, and also Vin's No State Project UK groups, which are great resources for being able to work out, it's very difficult sometimes to remove the emotion or the anger or be reactionary when you're confronted with that kind of injustice. So to be able to be prepared, both in yourself and in your behaviour, and also in being able to lay out a series of facts, evidence and statements to present cases. And I know that there are some groups that are looking towards, if certain inquiries aren't functional in getting out corruption within our police forces and within the Home Office, then they themselves are going to start to assemble cases and present them so that actually the public starts to put pressure on the court system to be responsive to their needs.
Yeah.
What do you think of the potential there is for that, Vin, in terms of people being able to lay out prosecutions against?
I think we've got more chances of getting bitten by a daffodil. Simple as that.
I'd say
none at all.
I'd say the same
because,
thing.
See what we're all missing here. Sorry, Vin, but what we're all missing here is there are criminal activities being done by people who represent us. Now we are challenging those criminal offences. They are throwing up as many barriers as they can, removing the rights and all the rest of it. John and I both sat in front of psychiatrists many, many years ago and told them what was going on in the children's homes, and the psychiatrists told us we were making it up. Now, 30 years later, we're proved that we were right. None of the psychiatrists and the psychologists and the social workers, nobody's being held accountable here. And it's criminal cases. This is not things about civil issues or stitching us up with the banks. These are criminal offences that are being ignored and making inquiries and all the rest of it that go on for yonder and forever.
I noticed there was a report this week, even in mainstream media, stating that supposedly 1.2 million has been spent so far on the child abuse inquiry, and yet so far not a single witness has been questioned. I mean,
absolutely, yeah,
it's absolutely unbelievable, isn't it? Really? Well, it's not because it's them, but it should be.
Good money
People should be in shock.
Well, yeah, but we're all adults here, right? And as adults, we've watched this for 20 years.
And longer.
It hasn't changed. Yeah, right. Well, I was being diplomatic here.
Yeah, also in terms of I guess being diplomatic is you have an inquiry. Its functionality doesn't seem to be fit for purpose. How's that for diplomacy?
I think they're all run by, and they've used the word. So I'm not going against them here. They have used the word fundamentalist very severely recently, and apparently so am I now. I'm a fundamentalist as well. But they are using total economic fundamentalism against us for the bankers. The bankers robbed us all. We have to pay back. First time in legal history, we are having to pay back for somebody stealing our money.
Well, it's interesting that you should mention stealing, because we had Gordon Bowden on a little while ago, and he put up some connections between prominent business people, politicians, and also the intelligence services, which I guess by definition also means special branch. Now, recently, a number of police officers and professionals who were seeking to do their job, I guess some of the people that you were talking about, James, even social workers as well, but they're bound by the Official Secrets Act.
Yep.
And, what do you guys think of the use of the Official Secrets Act to facilitate that kind of criminal enterprise?
Well, this in itself is a criminal exercise, isn't it? To do that to people, to say, look, you have just caused the death of 19 people for the DWP who threw themselves off the car park roof. I'm holding you under the Official Secrets Act so you can say nothing about it, is criminal. It's criminal acts that they are actually committing.
Jono, there's a question in the chat room. Why won't PMs take these issues on? Do they have skeletons of their own? I think they may mean MPs. They may mean the PM.
Well, it's a difficult one, because when you've got such power, and I don't think for 1 minute, people like David Cameron are pulling the strings, but it all the whole of the Houses of Parliament are run on the power over the MPs there, the little scandals, the blackmails, the things that they know about that make them vote a certain way, even if they don't believe in it. There's very few real MPs in there.
And it's worth thinking about the secret services in that as well, and how much control they have over how MPs vote.
They don't want us to know anything, and
and the power they hold over votes in Parliament.
You can pass a law so that nobody can inquire into any of her doings. What are these people trying to cover up? And if it's that big, how the hell can we do anything about what the MPs are doing if they can't do anything about it? It's just power.
Keep shining as bright a light on it as we can, I guess.
We try very hard, but it's a really difficult one. I was amazed to see so many people out on the anti-austerity march. 250,000 people. Perhaps that is now the start of something. Where we're going to get up. And actually, if I can just say one thing, because we're talking about the police. I don't want to tar all of them with the same brush, because I've had some very good dealings with the police who have helped me in various issues in my life. But one thing we were talking about the austerity march, we were outside the Houses of Parliament, and I said to a police officer stood there face to face, I said, when are you going to arrest the paedophiles? Are you going to arrest the paedophiles in there? And he looked at me and he actually gave me a wink and a nod. Yeah. He did. He as much as said, yes, we are. And I think there are a lot of the coppers that are on our side, but their hands are tied to a certain extent. But things like, the 150,000, when that grows next year to be double that, maybe that's when things will start to change.
And Vin, do you think that using things like the Official Secrets Act for and also, I guess, as James was talking about earlier, legalese and legal magic, if you like. Actually, I think we just lost Vin there. But, Jono, you mentioned that the police, you're talking about corrupt MPs. Yeah. And you also mentioned that sometimes the police have their hands tied. Well, what do you think about the influence of Freemasonry on the nature of policing and the nature of MPs? Because a large number of police are members of that secret organisation.
Yeah.
There's actually one lodge which is only for policemen. And it's also quite widely acknowledged that a large number of MPs are Freemasons.
Yeah.
In a world where you're on a list, if you're a member of a Facebook page or a political party, or even if you just, as you've done and seen, when you've attended a protest or a demonstration. So do you think that actually that's that the police should declare if they're a member of Freemasonry?
Yeah, well, of course they should, because if I say conflict of interest, that there must be such a huge conflict of interest in being with a Freemason and doing your job without any kind of bias. If you're told to do something within a society where if you don't do it, then you're no longer part of that. How can that be right? That's not a democracy. That's like a dictatorship, and they're very powerful. And how can it be right that all the people who have anything to do with this country's running are all part of that society and all work together and all look after each other? They don't give a damn about us whatsoever,
So do you think that's part of the advantage of forming groups like you've done and like James and Vin, that are enabling people to support each other when that kind of pressure comes into their life?
I think so. I mean, more and more people are starting to realise now, it's becoming very apparent that what was 2 years ago were conspiracy theories are no longer called conspiracy theories. They are the norm. And more people are starting to realise that and form groups that give information, tell people what's going on. And now we're starting to realise what's going on. I think even the police are starting to know that we know already. And I think that they are, really worried about how things are going to go, because I think that they are ready to join us. I think that day will happen. And
how have you found that when you engage with police on the ground that you can tell? I mean, the old joke is you get good policemen who spend 20 years getting to sergeant, and you have dodgy handshake policemen who seem to shoot up to inspector.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've met some really nice ones. When I was having problems with my child sexual abuse inquiries, there were no end of lovely police officers who helped me, phoned me up, and did all sorts for me. When I went to the austerity march, I went up to one of the horses, the mounted police, and asked him if I could take a photograph. And I did, and then he called me over and said he was totally behind what we were doing, because, the cuts and things and the corruption that was going on. They are losing the mounted police from London next year, I believe. And he said the horses are going to be put down. And that guy was absolutely gutted, because they have such an affinity with their horses. And, I bet generally they're a nice guy. But he said, if it kicks off, we've got to get involved. But we are backing what you're doing. No, he didn't have to say that to me. As we head into the last
part of the show, I've got another comment from the chat room question. It says, shouldn't the judiciary and government be separate bodies? But then it says, with Freemasonry involved, is that going to be impossible?
Well, if I can, that's meant to be the state of affairs already, which is obviously complete nonsense. There is no separation of powers, if you like, or separate, independence between government agencies such as government themselves and the judiciary. The judiciary all the time preach about the supremacy of Parliament, which basically means that they have to do as Parliament says. Whatever, if Parliament turns around and says all blue-eyed babies must be murdered by 12 o'clock tomorrow, there's absolutely nothing they can do about it. They have to do as they're told. Where's the independence in any of that? That's the problem.
And do you think that they're able to work with each other in the background, and sometimes we just see the ramifications of that disguised in legalese, such as we were talking about earlier, people using the Official Secrets Act to get away with obvious acts of criminality.
Yeah, I mean, we know it goes on despite claims to the contrary. Everything revolves around the crown at the end of the day. You know, we're one of the few countries in the world that has this whole monarchy system still, you know, with kings and queens and everything else. There's not many places on the planet now left that run a system like that. But this is what we've got. It all just comes back to that one power base at the end of the day, and all roads lead to Rome, as they say. You know, all roads lead back to the monarchy. So obviously they're all working together, and all of these so-called independent branches of government and the judiciary are nothing of the kind. That they do as they're told, and a lot of it is just public relations, just to turn around and say.
So when you get that kind of duplicity, when the person you're trying to hold to account actually has a crown involved in their affairs somewhere, and you're seeking to get some kind of response to them, you really kind of need to be prepared, I guess, that's the situation. Because, I mean, have you seen that happen in court, Vin?
Yeah, because you just can't get past it. You know, they can't seem to understand the fact that they want to believe that they're independent. They seem to think that being independent is having a building on the other side of the country. You know, we're not based in Buckingham Palace. What are you talking about? You know, we're based up in Leeds. That's why we're independent of the Crown. It's like, no, but it doesn't work that way. You're still on the payroll with the same boss, and the problem, all these problems we're talking about are never going to change for one reason and one reason only. All the time we've got a group of people calling themselves government are forcing us to pay them, forcing us to support them. They are never going to be held accountable.
So you mean
the force people to do things means not having to be held accountable for anything, or not having to be responsible for it.
So you mean that like any other service, I mean, I can choose if I want to drive a Ford or a Ferrari, but to a large degree, you can't choose if you accept the service of government. Is that what you're referring to, Vin?
Yeah, and that's the problem, because we're stuck supporting these people, like it or not, and they're the people that claim to have all this power over us, and they exercise it through violence. You know, they exercise that power. They can't get it any other way. They can't exercise authority over us through any other means. It has to be through violence, or nobody would take them seriously.
The thing is, as you've seen, Vin,
right.
when you can expose that, yeah, you're back, James. When you can expose that,
thank you.
The fact that actually you're not being treated fairly, and that's part of the empowerment, because the more people who see that actually it's a public relations exercise, and that justice functions at their whim or doesn't at their whim.
See, and it's not really justice. You know, we're not dealing with people who are actually dispensing. I mean, justice to me is a relativistic term anyway. You know, there is no real justice in the world. Not even you don't even really find it in nature. All you can hope for is that, you know, people can at least cooperate and be civilized about things. You know.
Yeah, you have to have another alternative to the armed rebellion.
On the subject of cooperating and being civilised, Vin, would you like to give your No State project links just before we say goodbye?
Sure, yeah. Well, I've only got a Facebook group at the moment still. That's the No State Project UK, so look that up on Facebook, and just look up markstevens.net, and and there's a wiki page available as well, which people can add to and add new information and case law and things like that. So,
and you're also quite active on Skype helping people out. James, thank you ever so much for joining us. I'm sorry we've had a few technical problems.
That's all right.
Can you tell people how to contact Citizens Guard?
All right, sir. Yep. If you go on to Facebook, you've got your, and just type in bold capital letters Citizens Guard, or go on to my. Yep, I'm losing you there, sir.
Okay, thanks, James. And Jono,
You're welcome, sir.
Can you quickly say your group?
Yeah. It's called Report Police Brutality Facebook page. Just apply there. It's a closed group, so you have to sort of ask to join. But it's nice. They've got some good people in there.
Jono, come over and have a chat with us.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for joining us, and thank you very much for the crew in the Bunker Show.
Good night, everybody.
Thanks for having us.
Good night, folks.
Good night, guys.
Thank you very much for joining us on the Bunker Show.